Aloha class, this is a video for E8-7, computing bad debt expense using aging of accounts receivable method. So this is the aging method. And with this, we have to do an adjusting entry, and our number of days unpaid, this schedule of estimated uncollectible will be our desired balance. And so we need to account for what's in the beginning balance of our allowance for doubtful accounts. And usually we do have a credit balance, but sometimes if we leave it unadjusted, it can be a debit balance. So we just didn't have enough in there and it becomes a debit balance. So let's create the schedule, right? So these I gave an example from the PowerPoint that you can see over here with specific customers, but they haven't really told us which customer we're looking at. So I'm just going to write customer and then there's a total. So I'm just following the same format here, and they're telling us these are the categories that they're going to group these aging of the bad debt expense or the estimate of bad debt expense, and it's from 1 to 30 days old. So 1 to 30, 31 to 90 days old, and 90 over 90. So I'm just going to write over 90. So those are the three groups, and in those groups, the total accounts receivable is for 1 to 30 days is $12,000 for, oh, sorry, over here, move it over. Okay, and then 31 to 90 days is $5,000, and more than 90 days old is $3,000. For each age group, the average loss rate. So we have this total accounts receivable. We can sum these up. Let's sum up all three of those. So C15, C15, D15, and E15. And it says the estimated uncollectible as a percentage. And it says for the group 1, which is our 1 to 30 days, it says 5%. So I'm going to write 0.05, or I could write 10 and make it a percentage here. So I could write 10 and make it a percentage. Oh, not 1,000%. So I'll do 0.1, and that can be, if I made it into a percentage, then we can see our 10% and 20%, 0.2. So 20% will be uncollectible. So we will multiply these to find the estimated uncollectible dollar amount. Uncollectible, and this is going to be in dollars. So for our 1 to 30 days, we're going to estimate $600, and I can just drag this formula over to make sure I am multiplying the correct numbers here. Yep, it looks like it's multiplying fine. And then I will sum up the three of these. So I'll sum up these three together. Or I could just probably drag this, copy this formula and paste it down here, and it looks like it's summing those up fine. So we're preparing a schedule of estimate an appropriate year-end balance for the allowance for doubtful accounts. And so we did that. We prepared the schedule, and the total estimated uncollectible was $1,700. And the total outstanding is $20,000. What amount of bad debt expense should be recorded on December 31st? So now we need to look at this balance, right? So at December 31, end of the current year, the allowance for doubtful accounts balance was $800 credit before the end of period adjustment entry. We want it to be $1,700. So what journal entry would we make? Let's make a T account. So just like this T account here, I have an allowance for doubtful accounts, and I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger, merge these two together, underline it, and put a T here. So they're saying that I do have a balance in there already that was $800 credit. So I'll put an $800 credit in there, and my desired ending. So my desired ending, just like how this one had 15,500 and my desired ending was 15,500, I want my desired ending to be 1,700. So I want that to be my desired ending. I'm going to put this number right there. And so I need to figure out, how do I get my 800 to be 1,700? Well, I could just take the full 1,700 and subtract 800, And then when I double check my formula, 800 plus 900, it seems like that's what I want in there. So I do need to credit my allowance for doubtful accounts by $900, and the appropriate entry besides allowance for doubtful accounts would be a bad debt expense. And that would increase expenses, decrease shareholders' equity, and then I would have a credit of 900 to allowance for doubtful accounts. Okay, and that's a contra asset, an increase to a contra asset. And I would do 900 because that's my adjusting entry. So this would be the appropriate journal entry. What amount of bad debt expense should be recorded? And I've even done the journal entry for you. That was bonus. So this is part, right, that first part. The second part would be your journal entry here, which would be 900. And I can put a debit and credit here. And accounts. And then now they're saying in a different scenario, let's say if the unadjusted balance in the allowance for doubtful accounts was a $600 debit, normally it's a credit balance, but sometimes we just don't adjust enough, so it becomes a debit balance. What amount of bad debt expense should be recorded on December 31st? So we're saying instead of this 800, we really have 600 debit balance. And the desired ending is from the schedule is 1700. So 1700 here. So how do I get this this balance that has a debit balance, right? Now I needed to have a credit balance, right? So if I just put 1700 on the right-hand side, right? If I just wanted an adjusting entry of 1,700, that wouldn't quite be correct, because if I sum up, right, if I sum up all of my credits and I subtract my debits, the sum of all my debits, it's not going to give me the balance that I want, because I really want 1700 in there. So I'm going to need to add not only the 1700 that I want as a credit, but I'm going to have 1700 add the 600 from the debit balance. So we're moving it all the way back to 0, and then additional, right, to move it to 1700. So I will need to credit my allowance for doubtful accounts to overcome the debit and increase the credit. So when I sum up all of my credits, subtract debits, that will give me the balance that I want. So remember, that's the same balance that we wanted from our schedule over here, estimated uncollectible. And if we have this debit balance, we need to make it back to 0. So a full 600 and an additional 1700 to get to the credit balance of 1700. So for the last part of that problem, what amount of bad debt expense should be recorded? I would record this same journal entry, but instead of 900, I need 2,300. And I don't think they asked for the journal entry, but you would need 2,300 credit to allowance for doubtful accounts. Yep, and that's it for this problem. Hopefully this was helpful. We're going to use the aging method as well as the percentage of credit sales method to estimate bad debt expense.